Total war, patterned by the Nazis for all Europe, comes at last to Germany.
How good were the boots worn by US troops in World War II? We're gonna find out by taking this actual boot made for World War II, cutting it in half and see how it's built, how it's constructed. Because to me, I assumed that for World War II, it probably, it's 80 years ago, they were there was a leather shortage, metal shortages, labor shortages. I assumed it was a pretty terrible boot that the troops out there were wearing. So I'm really interested. This is one of the more exciting videos I've ever done because I'm really interested to see what's inside of this boot. So it's the last call for the Clumps t-shirt. It's a limited edition. We're only gonna print them once, and the sale or the pre-order ends tonight. So if you want one of those Clumps t-shirts, links in the description. Oh, and more importantly, I think I gotta go grab the boots. My first boots are dropping on July 10th. We're only doing 500 pairs. Be sure to get on the email list in the description because I'm gonna send a series of emails with all the boot information, how to get size, and everything you need to know to jump on an order as soon as it goes live so that you don't miss your opportunity if you want a pair of these. Because I'm really excited, and wait till you see the apparatus we're gonna use to cut these in half. It's gonna be fun. So now back to the World War II boots. Now let's go over the boot information. So the brand is the Brown Shoe Company, and they were not the only company making and manufacturing this exact boot in the United States. There were several different companies contracted out by the government to make this boot for the troops. The style is the M1943, and that name is more for the entire uniform worn and revamped by the US government for the later stages of the wars. And it's interesting that this boot actually stayed in production and was the standard issue boot up until 1952 during the Korean War when they revamped it. The color of this boot was originally kind of a tan color. It was really similar to the Muleskinner leather by Red Wing, but it came with a little dubbin wax, and they recommended you put it on the boots to make it more waterproof, more wear resistant, and condition them. So they ended up looking a lot darker. You can see how dark it is in some of these spots. They weigh 2 pounds 5 ounces, and I got these boots for $178. I have no idea how much they would have retailed for that time, but looking at ads from that era, most boots like this cost anywhere from $4 to $8. So that's probably around how much they cost back then. And these were made in St. Louis, Missouri, USA. And these particular boots, if you look on the cuff here, on the inside, they were made in 1944 on April 12th, which is really cool that this stamp still exists with all the information and the sizing stamped into it. It's a really cool piece of history. Now let's go over the information we can gather about this boot before we cut it in half, starting with the leather. So this is a rough out full grain leather. If you look on the inside, you can see the smooth grain on the inside. And they did the rough out for the reason most people do. It's more abrasion resistant, but an interesting thing we dug up in the research is a part of the reason they did the rough out was because rough out absorbs oils and it absorbs the dubbin wax that they sent with these boots. So it was easier to waterproof these boots than if it were grain side out, the smooth side of the leather out. And this leather is a veg retan, which basically means it was originally tanned as a chrome tan, but then finished tanning in vegetable tanning compounds. And this allows you to have the best of both worlds. And for a fast production, they needed the speed and the durability of a chrome tanning production, but they probably wanted some of the properties and the natural elements of the veg tanning process to finish it up so that nobody had allergic reactions to it. And when you got them really hot and sweaty for days on end, they don't have any weird reactions to the chromium salts used. And then the cuff, you see this in military boots, Phil, and I never really knew what they're for. But the standard issue boot setup before this was a normal boot, but you had these canvas leggings or almost gaiters that covered the area from where the boot met your pants to prevent water and debris from getting inside of your boots. And so with this revamped version, they basically integrated a gaiter into the boot. Then to the construction, so this is a Goodyear welted boot. You can tell that by the way the upper is tucked underneath, and you've got this row of stitching that's on a separate piece of leather called the welt that connects the upper to the midsole and outsole of the boot. This is only a 270-degree welt, which means that welt stitch starts at the heel, wraps around the toe, and finishes at the heel, and the heel is all nailed together where the leather's wrapped, the nails hold it together. But what I thought was interesting is you've got nails going up the arch of the boot and also around the toe of the boot. In a very similar way to how Nick's, actually, this shameless plug, my own boot. Nick's does their screws in the toe and around the side of the boot. And you can see the only place that this has really failed after 80 years is right where there's no nails holding that outsole onto the midsole. Then underneath the sock liner and the rest of the insole is just a really thick layer of veg tan, and which is kind of what we see in these higher quality boots with the Nicks, and the Red Wings is a full veg tan insole. Then if we look at the midsole, this midsole layer is probably the thickest leather midsole I've ever seen on a boot. You know, it's even thicker than the Nicks boots. It's so thick. Where's my caliper? It's over a 1/4 inch thick slab of leather. These leather midsoles are really nice because it gives you an extra layer to compress and give you that footprint inside of your boot. And it also offers some more stability and more wear resistance. You know, you're not gonna feel the ground as much with that thick slab of veg tan in there. Finally, to the outsole. So this is a BF Goodrich outsole, which is kind of an interesting thing with the history of outsoles and rubber. You know, 80 years ago, a lot of the people that made the outsoles were the same companies making tires like BF Goodrich, because they were the only facilities that had enough capacity to pump out tons of outsoles and had access to the rubber compounds and had the technology to make outsoles. So it's interesting on these vintage boots, especially the war era ones, that these big tire companies were making outsoles. I don't know what I expected to see on a World War II boot, but I thought for sure there'd be some lugs on this thing, because I just can't imagine storming anything in a dressier style. It almost is this, it's like the same style of outsole as like a V-bar, a Vibram, that most people consider like more casual / dress outsole. And imagine storming Germany with this outsole on. Like, I just can't imagine it gives you too much grip. So I really expected to see a heavier lug for a standard issue military boot, but it just goes to show you how different things were back then when it comes to boot technology and what people expected from boots, because I'm sure this was even an upgrade from a leather outsole, which most people were wearing back then. The thing I actually love the look of this boot. It's a surprisingly beautiful boot for an 80-year-old war boot. I think it's pretty beautiful. So, that being said, let's cut this beautiful thing in half. This might be the stinkiest boot I've ever cut in half. This whole room smells horrible, but let's see what's inside of it. This boot is so different than what I thought it was gonna be. This boot is better than 99% of the boots out there. It's really well built. It probably cost $4 80 years ago, but today if someone made this boot in America with all these materials, you'd be somewhere in that $400 to $500 price range. You know, it's crazy, and I don't think that's not all because of inflation. A lot of it's because it was, back then, there was a tannery in every big city, there was cobblers on every street corner, and a lot of the boots that people wore during that time were high quality, made in America, by Americans. And so back then, you didn't have the specialized people like Nicks making high quality boots. Lots of people were making high quality boots. And back then there was so much leather being produced and so many people making boots that it drove the price of the boots down. So you got a lot higher quality boot for a lot better price. And granted, this is a heritage boot being compared to more heritage style modern boots. And we're not comparing them to the standard issue boots now. And this World War II boot has everything good about the Iron Rangers, plus a couple other even better attributes that you see in like Nicks boots and these higher quality boots. The biggest one is that leather midsole. These Iron Rangers and most $300 price range boots don't have a leather midsole layer. See, this only has the insole layer with the cork filling that the World War II boot has as well, but there's no huge slab of veg tan. And then the other thing that's different is The heel counter is a solid piece of veg tan leather. You know, a lot of these $300 boots, like the Red Wings, only have a leather board, which is leather fibers reconstituted and laid flat to make kind of like a cardboard or like a paper mache version of leather almost. So the quality of this World War II boot, in my opinion, is better than Red Wings and rivals these handmade boot companies, but these were made for World War II, which is crazy. This has been one of my most favorite videos ever because we're starting to dive into the history of boots and how we got to Red Wings and Nicks by these World War II boots. If you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe because I really want to do more of these boots, but the only way I can justify morally cutting open a piece of history is if I make an informational video that's gonna educate and intrigue hopefully tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people. So all your support makes these videos possible. Thank you so much. And thank you to the men and women who have served and are currently serving in the military. And thank you guys for watching and thanks for everything you do. It means a lot to me. See ya. Oh, and don't forget to get on the list for these boots if you want them. They're gonna go fast. So thank you guys. See ya.